It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 375. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Wait, this isn't a sound check?
No, it's not a sound check. Grace.
You sure it's not a soundtrack?
Might be one. Kodra.
Ba-ba-da-da-ba-da-da-da.
Damn.
Sound check.
Thalen.
Sibilance.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
The new existential angst theme song.
There was
It's kind of
apparently
a shame they don't have music on those things anymore.
there was apparently a streamer who listened to it for 20 hours straight while talking to chat.
Huh.
It would be good background music, honestly. Like, it's a great theme.
It would give me existential angst to do that. So, tracks.
So I have to share this tale because tales like this don't often go positively. I am that person in my neighborhood who feeds the neighborhood cats. So I have lots of neighborhood cats hanging out around my house. And so there's basically cats that hang out in the front yard and cats that hang out in the backyard. And we have a permanent resident that's been there for like 3-4 years. Still skittish, still very feral, but, you know, I mean, is there and safe. And at some point over Christmas break, a new tuxedo showed up in the backyard that we started calling Phantom because he has one half of his face is just white, kind of like a Phantom of the Opera mask. And he seemed like really friendly, and he didn't have the ear notch thing going on from a catch and release. And over the last 2 weeks, we had escalated from us being able to pet Phantom when I put out food to us being able to just pick up Phantom and hold this outdoor should-be feral cat. When that started, we started a search in earnest trying to figure out, like, was someone looking for Phantom? Because it is very obvious that he was somebody's baby. And lo and behold, we found a post on Facebook on this local area forum that somebody lost a cat May of 2021. And, you know, I played the game of Photoshop photos together with the photos they had posted to see if it really was Phantom. And flash forward Friday, they came by, they picked up Phantom, and Phantom is perfectly back to normal. And it is so rare that, like, when an animal gets out, that the animal ever gets found, unless it's found, like, immediately. And I don't know what all tales that cat has lived through in the last 8 months, but, you know, he just happened into our backyard and decided to take up residence, and we happened to stumble across the correct post. So it is a good tale in a bad time.
Yeah.
And you are the best egg.
I'm just so happy that it really did work out that way. Because, like, we've had animals that were pretty regulars that disappear, and generally speaking, we assume the prognosis is the worst. But yeah, no, it's so great. And, like, I guess the daughter of the family had gone to college to take finals, and that weekend, he snuck out of the house and there was a big thunderstorm, and I guess got scared probably and got into an area he wasn't familiar with, and, you know, eventually wound up 2 miles from where he started at our house. So it is good that something like that can happen. Anyway, we got a bunch of things to talk about tonight. Grace, you have been playing a game called Wytchwood on the Switch, right?
Yes, I have. I think it's available on a bunch of platforms, but I have been playing it on the Switch because it is perfectly suited for the Switch. But this is a game that just came across my Twitter feed. I can't remember who But I was like, oh, that sounds up my alley. And this is a kind of game that I just needed in my life and haven't seen this type of thing executed like this before, really. It's just basically a crafting game.
Nice.
It's beautiful. It's incredibly chill. It's funny. But you're a witch who lives in the wood and you wake up from a nap and for reasons you now have to collect souls for a goat. And the way that you do this is wandering around the woods and the surrounding environments, like picking up crafting components and crafting things and talking to people, figuring out what their problems are and figuring out how to collect these souls that you need. There's not exactly combat, like there are aggressive enemies, but mostly you craft things to subdue them, and then once they're knocked out, you hack them up or, collect pieces of them for your potions. It's so wonderful. It's just, it's incredibly beautiful to walk around the environment, and just all the different enemies and animals and things are just really charming and or funny. But just the whole concept of, like, here's a game where the point is not to kill enemies, it's to subdue things. And, like, yes, maybe you have to kill some newts to get Eye of Newt for something, but, like, you're not, I don't know, combat is definitely not the point of it. And I just really love it. Like, it's a concept that I have hoped to see, and I think there are other games that have aspects of that, but this is just executed incredibly well in just this really charming way. I'm a few hours into it. I have not beaten it yet. And judging by the state of my crafting log, I still have a good ways to go. The other thing that I really love about it, like, because it's so focused on gathering and crafting things, is that there's no inventory management of any kind. Like, if I see a stick on the ground, I know I can pick up that stick and there will be room for it in my bags. I never have to look for where it is in my bags. I never have to worry about how many I have unless I just need to go get more. It makes life very simple. And in fact, most of the time, I don't even look at the inventory page. I'm just looking at the crafting page, which will then, when I mouse over or highlight the thing I want to make, it will tell me if I have enough of the materials or not. I don't have to worry about looking in my bags for it. That is really well done, and it makes me very happy because I can, if I just want to take time wandering around the woods and trapping squirrels, I can just do that for a couple minutes and never have to worry about, well, now I have to run back to my house and store these in a chest somewhere. Yeah, I can just keep wandering to my heart's content. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, if you just want something very chill and you like gathering and crafting in games, and you like fairy tales, I think you would probably enjoy it. I certainly have been having a great time with it, and it's a perfect sort of bedtime, hang out in bed with the Switch and play for a little bit before you go to sleep kind of game.
It looked really interesting when you first told me about it.
Yeah, I don't even really know exactly what sparked me to look into it and buy it, but just like it just looked very pretty. And then when I looked at the description and saw that it was just all about gathering and crafting, yeah, right up my alley.
So something else that folks have been playing on the Switch this week, actually yesterday, Pokemon Legends Arceus or Arceus. I don't know which way it is.
Beats me.
But a vastly different kind of Pokemon game came out, which is a more open world exploration based Pokemon game.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm just starting to get into this one.
Isn't Pokemon usually kind of? I mean, it's a
No.
open world. It's just not action-y in the open world.
This is not like that.
Okay.
Like, this is not. I mean, first of all, Pokemon games tend to be incredibly linear.
Yeah, like there's roads and you go from one end to the other of the road.
So most of my Pokemon experience lately is with Sword and Shield.
Yeah, so this game is, hey, what if we took the idea of the wild area and made that the whole game?
Okay.
So is this game like set in the past?
It
Or
is
is it
set
just-
in the past of the region Diamond and Pearl takes place in.
Okay. Because I know I'd seen things like, create the region's first Pokedex and all that. So it's like,
Yes, and it's
definitely like styled to look like, old timey Japan from what I've seen.
to spoil the first 30 seconds or so. You have been sent back in time to this area.
Ah, time travel.
Because if you think about Diamond and Pearl, yes, okay, time travel. Gee, I wonder what this means for the future. But it's kind of fun to have just a weird game where you have action elements in a game that is still a Pokemon game. They tweaked the battle system a little bit, so you have things like if you use move like Quick Attack and your action speed is fast enough, you might end up getting a double turn. You have a sort of FF10 like timeline, which feels completely unnecessary in the case of one-on-one battles, but And you can catch things by just sort of beating them with Pokeballs before you actually engage in a battle, which is kind of funny. And they gave some Pokeballs like different properties to better enable this sort of gameplay. Like there's a heavy ball, which is you throw like, this thing must weigh a ton because you throw it like 3 feet. But if you can manage to hit a Pokemon with it, it's much more likely to actually catch them. And like hitting them from behind also increases your chances. Or the most ridiculous thing, throwing a Pokeball with a Pokemon in it at a Pokemon and hitting from behind gives you a free turn.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, seems reasonable.
But I'm just starting to get into it, and I've done things like they believed, along with like the wild area, they believed that Zone Sweeper should maybe be a thing. So I ran into a level 30 Parasect with my level like 15 team. I have seen a Snorlax. It had red eyes and looked very scary, and I didn't actually walk up to it because that seemed like a bad idea. But similar things like, hey, there's a lot of Ponyta here. Oh, there's also a Rapidash. Maybe don't.
Is there
Sounds amazing, honestly.
is there some mechanic in this game like Arceus Max?
I haven't seen one. The big mechanic change seems to be strong style / quick style or whatever it's called. You can choose to spend more PP on a move to make it either faster and weaker or stronger and slower. The big red-eyed enemies can also do this, so yeah, it's a thing. Fun so far. I don't know if there are anything like gyms. You sort of advance in your ability to control higher level Pokemon by gaining research points, which you earn by catching and battling particular types of Pokemon. So there might be something like you can catch multiples of this to advance, or you can catch this without being seen to advance, or you can catch this, you can defeat this Pokemon or encounter it in, say, a rock pile. Freaking Geodude. Anyway, the tasks vary based on Pokemon, so that's how you complete the Pokedex, as it were. You don't just automatically know everything as soon as you catch it for the first time. It will be interesting to see what else this game has to throw at me. Because it's really cool so far, and it's a very different experience from the previous Pokemon game so far.
I'm really excited about that part right there.
Me too. I picked up the Diamond and Pearl remake and started playing it and decided I didn't really need to. I don't think. I've played this game.
Yeah, right. And that's sort of how I felt with a lot of even some of the new stuff where they've done a lot of different things,
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen them.
So I hope this does well. It's definitely a bit of an experiment for the Pokemon Company.
I mean, if social media is anything to gauge it on, like, it's everywhere right now. Seems like everyone is playing it. I've not seen any real negative commentary about it.
I did not look up reviews or anything before jumping into this because it's like, okay, I should at least reward them trying something different. And it turns out it's good. So I'm enjoying that.
Nice.
So, game that we were going to talk about last week but ran out of time is Chorus.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's no secret that I've been deep down a space games rabbit hole. And it's been interesting to see like what's come out in space games in a while, like recently. And Chorus, I find really interesting. It's more of an arcade game, which is fine. Like, it's got a lot more Star Fox-ish DNA, or like more like Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Very kind of arcadey, but it's doing this open worldy thing where you can go around and do quests for people. And it's got, I haven't gotten super far into it, but it's got a main character who is like this ex-cult member, and she's got a lot of extant anger about ex-cults, which, reasonable. It's just but it's been interesting to play. Like, there's I've gone on and on about movement in games and why I think movement is super important. And in a lot of ways, like, space games are all about movement, and it's interesting to see different ways that's expressed. But I like flying around. It's pretty fun to fly around and blow stuff up and just generally see space and like different sci-fi environments. It's a little arcadey for my tastes. It's the kind of thing that I can easily imagine, one of those sit down things in a one of those like sit down arcade machines having in it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is just different. I'm trying to think of what one of the things that bugs me about it, and this is a thing that bugs me about it. It bugs me about Star Wars games in a lot of cases. Space flight and like the way a plane flies are very different, and I feel like that's a thing that gets overlooked a lot, because if you're flying in a plane, you can go forward and back, and you can roll to turn. But like the way a plane flies, you're kind of, not to go too far down on a specific tangent here, but like a flight model that puts you in space where you don't have all of the degrees of motion that you would expect is like when a game has a bad water level, where like it wouldn't be this hard to swim up. Like, this is not something that should be difficult. And Chorus has a little bit of that kind of bugs me. It has a tendency, like, because it's teaching, it's doing a thing where like one of the strengths of Star Wars Rogue Squadron from longer ago than I care to admit, is that yes, it treats everything that you're doing like you're flying a plane, whether you're in space or not. But also, it spends a lot of time on planets anyway, so that's fine. And none of the gameplay feels weird because of the way it handles you flying around. And Chorus has a lot of places where, hey, what if you found a secret or a power up or, a hidden bit of loot or whatever in in a place that is really hard to reach if all you can do is move forward and roll, but would be trivial if you had even yaw or side thrusters. And I find that I find that weird and mildly frustrating, because it's like, come on, you've made a game about flying in space, but you don't have the right, like, the controls don't make sense for it. But it's not annoying enough for me not to enjoy it, and it does a lot of neat sort of moving around in 3D without moving around in 3D being miserable. Interesting challenges. I think chases in space are really interesting, for example, which is a thing that you don't often get to see. And it sort of ties into the related topic. I'll go ahead and steal your thunder, Bel.
Go for it.
Where it is not just space games that do this. It is always frustrating to me to see a game that has a conceit and doesn't lean into it enough. We've talked about them. We've talked about them a lot. One of the worst offenders here are stealth sections in games that don't support stealth. So it's just like incredibly bad stealth mechanics because you're missing all of the things that make stealth games work. But it's also true of like games where you fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hilariously, the game I keep thinking of as you're talking about this and like controls that are frustrating you has been a Mega Man game, like old school Mega Man games, where I feel like there are those are games that are about, in many ways, precision platforming, and the controls are so bad for precision platforming.
Wait, what? You did kind of lose me on that one.
Okay, like what I was in a big precision platforming mood a while back, and I was like, you know what just came out? Mega Man 11.
Right.
And I played Mega Man 11, and I remembered like it was like, oh, it's not just like I was bad at these games as a child. Like these games have mechanics that make them like, if you hit an enemy, it might as well be a one shot in many cases, because the like way they knock you back is probably throwing you into a pit to kill you.
Yes. Mega Man is not just about precision platforming. It is also about shooting things.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the thing that you want in a precision platform game, Kodra, is control while in the air.
Mega Man has that.
But like there's a lot of games that really cared about precise platforming that didn't have that thing.
Mm-hmm.
True. And like we could go into a long thing on Mega Man X versus Mega Man Classic here, but I don't think that's really where we're going with this topic.
No.
Well, I was going to say, I loved Mega Man X games because they don't necessarily do that thing as much.
They do, in fact, do that, but the big thing there is you have a dash.
Oh, is that why it didn't bother me? Okay.
You have a dash, you have diagonals, your entire movement system is different.
Yeah, it feels a lot better.
Anyway.
But there's a bunch of, for example, platformers that, I mean, I don't necessarily know about Mega Man in particular, but like there's definitely platformers I've played where it's like, oh, this doesn't do the thing that the game purports to do.
I would say if you want to go to classic video games that are like that, my go-to is Sonic 1.
Yes. Yes, that was exactly the one I was thinking about. Sonic the Hedgehog. I think I put the note on here that I called it the Sonic the Hedgehog problem. Because like Sonic the Hedgehog purports to be a game about going fast, and it mostly isn't. Like, yes, it's a game in which you can go fast, and sometimes going fast
in the first level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a game where you can go fast, but like the thing that it wants you to do and the thing that the game has built around and made fun are not the same thing.
Yeah, you can go fast and you'll miss all of the things that you could collect and then run into a robot and die.
I was going to say, and then run into spikes.
Yeah.
And on later levels, it's not even that fun. You just run into a pit and die.
Yeah, you end up wishing that you had... Yeah, it's like you end up wishing that you were playing Mega Man in these levels because it would work better. Or Mario or whatever.
Well, and it's also interesting how that game changed over time, because by the time you reached Sonic 3, it more or less was a game about going fast.
Yes, Sonic 2 is a game much more about, if nothing else, preserving momentum. You're way less likely to just run into something random if you're going fast.
Yep.
It had its own fun levels like Metropolis Zone, but still.
I was going to say, what I remember from that, though, is that you go... How to put this? You go fast, but, like, you don't necessarily... I did not feel like I was making a lot of decisions in those games. I felt like I was going fast, and the level was kind of guiding me to the end.
There are a lot of alternative paths in Sonic 2.
Yeah. But other than the sort of amusement of them, there's usually not a great reason to go after them.
Yeah, not in that game.
Eventually, it's where you got like the Chaos Emeralds levels, which were always like starting in Sonic 2, were actually starting in Sonic 1, were these bonkers, like completely different levels than the main game, like different games entirely.
Yes.
I mean, they were basically mini games.
Yeah, but like if you wanted to have a place where the goal was to go super fast, that would be the place to do it. And then that's not what happened.
Well, that's the lose condition for taking too long, because the longer you're in there, the faster you go, and the harder it becomes to control.
Yeah.
I mean,
like pinball one.
Yep.
Sonic 1 is the pinball one, Sonic 2 is the half pipe, Sonic 3 had Blue Sphere.
Oh, God. Which was even worse. I hated that one.
It's not that popular. Some people love it, though. Sonic Mania had one that was actually about going fast, even though it was still kind of a mini game.
Sonic Mania also had Blue Sphere, I thought.
I thought they had that as like a side thing. You didn't have to do it for Emeralds, at least. It does have Blue Sphere, but I don't even remember what it's for. Gives you like a power-up or something?
Maybe.
In the game that most recently suffered from this problem for me was Guardians of the Galaxy, which I finished last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And that game, for the most part, is a third-person shooter. But every so often, it asks you to do a thing with no warning that doesn't quite have the fidelity that the rest of the game has.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I feel like there's a whole like sub or side topic here of bad mini games in your game.
Yeah.
Well, and that's frequently what you get into, because I feel like I will still hold up the one of the later Thief games lockpicking mini game as one of the best examples of a good mini game, because it is completely in line with what you expect the character to be doing. It fits in with the like it's a natural feeling extension of the rest of the game that you're playing. It's not like, oh hey, you're playing another way lower fidelity game all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. And then on the far other end of the spectrum, there's Blitzball.
Right. Or like
FF10 had so many mini games and they were all terrible.
Yeah.
Or like the interminable stealth segment in so many games where it's like, this is a stealth segment, but they don't give you tools or messaging or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels like you get randomly punished.
Yeah.
And like, it's one of those things where, I was making the comment the other day that I think there are a lot of people that are like, that tried a stealth segment or two in a game that they otherwise like and are convinced that they hate stealth games because they're like, yep, that's what a stealth game is.
Mm.
I mean, I've talked to people for whom that's their like, oh yeah, I played a rogue in WoW, and so I hate stealth. And I'm like, what?
Just be like, go play Thief. Just play Thief.
Because like I can understand not enjoying, like if looking at spaces and puzzling out movement and being patient and waiting for your moment and then being decisive in your moment is not a type of gameplay that appeals to you, then yeah, like no, that's not what stealth games are about. But stealth games are not that terrible segment of Endwalker.
Yeah, they're not just tail the person and don't get too close and don't get too far, and they'll randomly turn around sometimes. Good luck.
Yeah. I was gonna say like even Old Thief was pretty good. Like, it was a great stealth game for its time. It still felt like it was not always clear when you were gonna get seen and when you weren't.
Yeah, I mean, Thief is the earliest example of somebody trying to do something different, and like modern stealth games give you feedback.
Yeah, it's important that you know what is going to happen that's going to cause you to get seen.
I mean, it's a long-standing, it's now a meme, but like Metal Gear Solid lets you know via one of the most iconic sound effects in a video game.
That's fair. Also, the earlier Metal Gears just plain up showed you vision cones.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in in Ghost of Tsushima. I really wasn't that enamored of the stealth gameplay early on, and over time I've unlocked more abilities to use during stealth, and so I'm much more willing to engage with that and like feel like I could actually kill a bunch of guys without being seen instead of hoping maybe I'll get one or two before the alarm gets sounded.
Like, even
but on
in
the
that
bright
game,
side there,
though,
when the alarm gets sounded, it just means now I have to kill everybody, face to face, and that's fine. I could do that.
like,
Yeah.
even in that game, though, they took both paths and made them interesting. And sometimes I go quiet, and sometimes I stroll up and duel people.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where I'm like, I don't need to spend the time being sneaky here. Let's just do a showdown, and by the
Especially
time
now that I can take out like three people at the same time now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm strongly of the opinion that any stealth segment that results in a failure if you are caught is a badly designed stealth segment.
Yeah, I feel like usually the most interesting parts of stealth games are how do I recover when something goes wrong?
Yeah.
And if you have good tools to do that, then that can be really good.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why...
Like Dishonored. Dishonored works really well because if you get seen, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I love Deathloop, because Deathloop had a lot of stealth segments or things that you could do stealthily, but also there were good and reasonable reasons to go loud. And a lot of times I had to make it was a considered decision whether or not I was going to do stealth or go loud.
Well, I mean, and it might be kind of the dumbest mechanic ever, but it is nice when a game does what Assassin's Creed did and gives you reset points where you can, like, if you can get to this point, you can reset things and approach it differently again by, jumping in the bushes or jumping in a cart or whatever.
Yeah. And similarly, you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy, where like there's this flight game, but it's not I feel like I'm missing all of the controls I need to make it feel good to fly around.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I assumed Bel was about to bring up was, sometimes you have to fly the Milano. And...
Oh, no, that's not the worst of the mini games. Okay, so this is going to be mild spoiler territory, but like you've already found the space llama.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a mini game where you have to coax the space llama to do something. And
by singing.
By singing, yes. And it is the worst thing ever. Like, that was so frustrating because the llama likes to listen to two people sing and hates when two other people sing. And through a combination of those actions, you have to somehow herd the llama up a specific path.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the worst of the mini games. But like the flight game is bad, but mostly because I was playing on mouse and keyboard, and the controls are horrible with a mouse.
The flight game reminds me of the gummy ship in Kingdom Hearts.
That got good in the second game, but in the first game, it's awful.
Yeah, it's basically the same level of control as the first one. Like, you can move left and right and hit a boost, and you're trying to dodge lots of things.
Well, I mean, a perfect example of this also is Mass Effect. Like, the ATV that you take planet side is horrible.
I think it was
the
terrible.
hovercraft is horrible. Like, these were things that somebody, like, what I always imagine is that there's somebody on staff at the studio that really wants this mechanic in the game and stayed up and programmed it and now wants to use it. And it's half-baked, and everybody knows it's half-baked, but they're just kind of humoring the person that worked this hard on, their stupid, hovercraft.
It's funny that you bring up Mass Effect 2's hovercraft, because that was an entire DLC.
Yeah, and it wasn't worth it.
Jeez. I feel like
I don't think that one was quite as bad as the Mako from 1, but it wasn't excellent.
Yeah, like things like the Mako is like, you can't avoid that. That is an integral part of land missions. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's less like humoring somebody who decided they wanted this thing and they just never quite got it right. Like,
maybe
similarly, driving a car in Cyberpunk is the worst thing ever, and
that is at least
I feel like
fixable.
that's something that really ought to be at least decent.
So the weird thing there is, if you change the configuration of driving a car in Cyberpunk, it's fine. But like, it ships in a completely unusable state.
Apparently I need to find the good configuration then.
I will dig it up. Yeah, like that's how I got through that one mission where I'm supposed to follow a van across town. Because, there was no way in hell I was going to make high-speed turns prior to that.
The first thing is I need a chase cam instead of, like, first-person view for this thing if they're going to make like that. It's awful.
Wait, you don't play in third-person view while driving?
I didn't know I could put it in third-person.
You can put it in third-person view.
Twice. I've avoided it as much as possible because it's terrible.
Yeah, no, you can absolutely you can drive in third-person view. But also, there are ways to fix the steering in that game. Because you're right, it is unusable the way it comes.
Yeah, it's just like a combination of way too touchy, and I cannot determine where the car even is, like, in relation to the things around me.
It's like, why would you ever start in first-person view? That, like, even in a game that is designed for racing, I never play in first-person view.
And the thing for me is that, minigames serve a purpose. Like, they exist for a reason, and it's pacing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really, really important to break up the experience with different things that you do, because, like, it keeps people interested. It keeps you from getting exhausted of the same gameplay over and over and over again. So they're important.
I just wish they were skippable.
Well, but that's the thing is, games have tried to make them skippable or made them so that there's no, absolutely no change. It's like, this is the game. You're playing the game. It never changes. And they always do worse because people are like, this game is a grind. I'm tired of it. I don't want to play this game anymore.
I mean, Ratchet and Clank makes the hacking minigame skippable. If you
Ratchet
don't want to
Clank,
do it, you can just straight up skip it.
Ratchet and Clank also has 3 different games in its game. So it can break up its pacing through altering which one of those you're doing.
Yeah. Like, you just need some sort of, more than one mode of gameplay, and minigames are one of the easiest ways, I guess, to add that.
Yeah, just to insert like a little snack or a little distraction. Because, like, can you imagine Ratchet and Clank if you could just skip all the platforming sections?
Yeah, but it's kind of like the equivalent of going to a fine restaurant and having a multi-course meal, and one of the courses is a Twinkie.
That's why when they're good, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to steal that analogy, the lockpicking mini game, when it's done right, and it's like, oh, hey, here's a lock, and you're working on the lock, and you're looking at the lock, but you can also glance around to see if anybody's coming. You're listening to hear if anybody's coming, but you're also listening to the lock. All of that, instead of a Twinkie, it's that little palate cleanser sorbet thing, and it's exactly what you need to break up the gameplay. But yes, if you get it wrong, then you've got this random piece of burnt toast in the middle of your 7-course meal.
Yeah, then it becomes stop doing the thing that you're enjoying and do this garbage for 5 minutes. And it feels bad.
Or it just takes you out of the experience as you realize what like you are analyzing like what a terrible like what are my like whenever you're asking me is like how do I do this? Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I don't have the tools to do this. The aforementioned stealth section in Endwalker is just avoid the enemy's invisible aggro radiuses, which is not good gameplay because you don't like all you know is by like a vague feel. And so frequently you're like, I am looking, this enemy is looking directly at me, but I'm outside of their aggro radius. So it's okay. That doesn't feel like a stealth game. That feels like jank.
Well, and you know, it's sort of making a tacit assumption that you've previously paid a lot of attention to the aggro radii of enemies.
Well,
and if you haven't, then you're like, this. I have never paid attention to this or had any reason to pay attention to this. Why do I have to pay attention to it now?
Well, and it's kind of worse like that too, because like they purposefully screw you over on the path.
We should not talk about this right now.
Okay. I'm just saying, like they screw up the path, so you can't even like try and be ahead of the game.
Yes.
So it really like the only like that's the problem I have with minigames in general is if the only way you know knowledge is by repeated failure, especially when it's a thing that you're only going to see once in a game. Like a lot of times, by the time you reach a minigame in a game, you will have like had lots of learning experience that taught you the core mechanics of the game. And then you are thrown into a section of a game with no knowledge, no understanding of the rules of that game, and expected to execute it just like you're executing everything else that you learned over the course of 30 hours and gradually eased into. So like if a game is going to have a minigame component, they really need to treat it with the same level of tutorialization that they do the rest of the concepts in the game.
Yeah, which is also why you end up with things like, you know, hacking minigames or lockpicking minigames where they teach you it early and then are consistent with it through the game.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, over time it ramps up difficulty so that by the time you're at that, you know, 40-hour mark and you have to do a very difficult version of it, you've mastered a simple and an intermediate, and now you're ready for the hard version. And I think it also depends on how forgiving the fail state is and how quickly it gets you back into the action. Because like one of the problems that I had with Guardians is most of the time, like say you just walk off a cliff in that game, it will put you right back to the point at which you walked off the cliff, allowing you to immediately adjust your course and move on with life. But there are some circumstances where the checkpoints are a little wrong, and like the thing that you immediately are going to fail at is at the end of a cutscene. So every time you pick yourself back up and have to try at a different attempt, it is at the end of a cutscene.
Seeker of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful. Like I know this thing now. I need to practice it, but now I've got to sit and wait through, you know, a 5-minute cutscene before you're going to give me the chance to practice again.
Yep. Like that little video of the thing happening and the people falling was really cool the first time. It's less cool the fifth time.
The other game that I was thinking of with that was Jedi Fallen Order, which I loved, but if I died, I was staring at like a 2-minute load screen at least.
Well, and again, that game was kind of inconsistent in that, because there were times where it was really fast to go back to a checkpoint. There were other times where the reset was on at the end of a large load screen. And I think it depended on what kind of failure you reached, because the I'm sliding down an icy tunnel and I missed a jump, those were really fast to reset. I'm down in the middle of an area and I just straight up died. That was that was a slow reset. Like, it took forever to get loaded back into wherever you were last checkpointed. So falling in that game seemed to be way more forgiving than any other kind of death. That game was also a game that had some messaging problems as to where you should be going. And I think that's
order, yes.
And I think that's what also makes a minigame feel bad, is that if it's not messaged well.
Messaging is super important. I mean, I'll die on that hill constantly. Like, obfuscating messaging is not a good way to make your game more difficult. It means that you are relying on gotchas to have difficulty. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think that's the reason why FF14's raid design pulled so dramatically ahead of World of Warcraft's for a while, if not. I mean, I haven't looked at World of Warcraft raids for a while, but like, how many WoW raids were won or lost on, we got RNG'd?
Well, and honestly, like with the great exodus of WoW players over to 14, there's been some interesting stuff going on as some of those formerly WoW World First Raiders have tried to go back and participate in some of the content. And I've seen clips of them talking about how hard it is to go back to having a game poorly messaged. That until that they had gotten used to raiding in 14, they didn't feel it was badly messaged. And they didn't realize how many add-ons they were having to go and find to fix messaging problems.
Yeah, to provide something close to what Final Fantasy XIV just has there by default.
Yeah, my only complaint with 14's messaging is over the years they have changed the way they message certain mechanics.
Yeah,
I wish they would go back and standardize them so that they always look the same.
Actually, going back is they added the eye mechanic to all of the gaze attacks, but that's like the only one I can think of.
That and they finally added telegraphs to Cyclopses.
They did add telegraphs to some Cyclopses. They added telegraphs to the first one you're likely to see, the one in Vale.
Yeah.
Well, and they've now
the one that just out of nowhere would just like, it killed me. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to stand there.
Well, they've now got that marker that's basically the tank buster marker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would love to see them add that to all the fights.
They've started adding some really specific markers, like this is an AoE that will follow you, and this is a stack up that hits multiple times.
Yeah. This is an attack that will hit these 4 people in order.
Yeah, that one started with Shadowbringers, didn't it?
I think that is the first place we saw that, yeah.
There's one before that, but it's very specific.
Yeah, the pips over your head.
You get swords over your head, counting from a number 1 to 4 in Ravana.
Yeah, that's right.
True.
That's right.
Yeah, Ravana did it with swords.
But the funny thing is like, I complain about mini games, but as a kid, one of my all-time favorite Game Boy games was Batman, like the original Batman on the Game Boy.
Oh, wow.
And it had like so many wildly different game modes, because there was like a racing, like a driving through Gotham streets mode. There were platforming sections. There were, Batjet sections.
I mean, I guess there's that. If you've got enough mini games in your game, then no single mini game has to be like super brilliant, because just, like, it changes like WarioWare.
Evil
like,
Land 2 is a game full of mini games, and they aren't all of equal quality, but another one's going to be along in just a minute, so whatever.
Yeah, I recently was playing a game, I think it's called Later Alligator, and it's just entirely mini games, and it's fine because it doesn't sell itself as anything else.
Yeah, you know what you're getting into.
Well, and I think that's fine too, especially if you don't put so much pressure on a single one.
Yeah, if they're like short and, you like, it'll be over in a minute and then another one will come along. And you're not playing, the same mini game over and over and over throughout the entire game. Like,
well, and I think it's also really important how forgiving the fail state is.
Yeah.
Like, can you suck and get through this mini game? Because if you can limp along and get through the minigame, then it's fine. Like, you can mash your face against that wall and get through it so you can move on to the rest of the game that you like.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm still thinking about stealth games. A lot of stealth games or games with heavy stealth elements that are done well, there's a key that you can get for almost every door. But if you can pick the lock, you're a lot faster. It's less risk.
That where mini games, like successfully completing this mini game, gives you some benefit, but it isn't required.
Well, that was going back to Mass Effect. Like in Mass Effect 2, I really loved the hacking minigame where you're matching code segments. Like, I don't know why I love that game. So I never tried to brute force that. However, there was always the ability for me just to brute force those.
Yeah, you'd always just smear some gel on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, lockpicking minigame in ESO does that. Just like, I'm going to force this lock.
Yep.
ESO has one of the better lockpicking mini games in the entire Elder Scrolls series.
I like the ESO lockpicking. I find it really enjoyable. But I don't think I did initially when we were, alpha testing.
No, your feedback was that it looked like Oblivion's lockpicking, but didn't act like Oblivion's lockpicking, so it was weird.
Exactly. Yeah. But I got used to it eventually. But again, that was something that came up with enough repetition that I had multiple chances to get used to that system.
Yeah, like it was consistently used. Whereas if you had a sudden lockpicking minigame in the middle of an otherwise unrelated, like if Destiny suddenly had a lockpicking minigame that you needed to do, it'd be like, what is happening here? Why?
Yeah, like there are games where it doesn't make sense to need to pick a lock. In Full Throttle, you don't pick a lock, you kick the door down. Because that is who that character is.
Yeah. It would be weird if you suddenly had to do a lockpicking minigame in the middle of that.
And I also think like there's a difference between a minigame and like a puzzle segment, because you usually go into the puzzle segment expecting to have an issue with it.
It depends on the puzzle segment and how failure works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how it's messaged. Weaving in puzzle segments into the games that I DM has been an incredibly fraught experience.
I'm thinking of Secret World and all the wildly different things it asked us to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it set the expectation pretty early that was a thing. So when we encountered a truly weird one, like our brains were primed for it. But like one of the worst flight sections that I can recall is in, I don't remember if it was Knights of the Old Republic 1 or Knights of the Old Republic 2 or both of them, where suddenly you have to dogfight to get to the next planet. And it's really low fidelity dogfighting.
Ugh.
The inevitable turret segment.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if you're playing a Star Wars game, you must want to blow up TIE fighters with a turret, right?
No.
No.
I think the only time that I've ever enjoyed being in a turret in a video game is when somebody else I know is flying the actual ship.
Yeah, that works pretty well in Warframe.
Yeah. And even that can be hit or miss, but it's
That's
still at
fair.
least interesting. It's like, oh, there's like gameplay here where if I don't have line of sight on my targets, I can be like, hey, can you roll the ship so that I can see targets? Like it's teamwork. But otherwise, yeah, it's like.
Anyone have any short topics?
Celeste.smc came out this week.
Isn't that the Celeste Super Nintendo version?
Yes, it is the Super Mario ROM hack with Celeste mechanics.
When you say with Celeste mechanics.
You have a wall bounce, you have a dash, and then a bunch of the like features from Celeste are in the game.
Is it still Mario, or did they do
it's still Mario.
Sprite swap?
No, it's still Mario. It is still Mario. There is other fun, because of the way they implemented it, there are fun, interesting things you can do. The speedrun looks very cool as I've been watching it come together. But I am not a Mario player, and I'm not a Mario Kaizo player, although I have been playing Learn to Kaizo this week. That's what I've been doing for the past hour while on stream trying to beat a single level. So we'll see. I'm going to try playing it on Monday, but it looks very fun.
I guess a really short topic is another game that I have played and beat recently is God of War on PC. God of War is a great game. Like the modern version of God of War. It controls great with a mouse and keyboard. But like really from a standpoint of a story aspect, I think it's a very important game. It is doing some things that I've never seen a game do. Mostly the relationship between Kratos and boy.
Well,
boy. And and the way it changes over the course of the game. Like there's so much character growth that happens throughout that story, and it is well worth experiencing. Also the Leviathan axe. One of the things that I've been thinking about is just how hard it is to come up with a weapon that is iconic enough to be placed among the pantheon of iconic video game weapons.
look, that is a hard place to break into.
It is, and like the Leviathan axe,
the previous God of War got there,
right? Like the Leviathan axe is absolutely deserves its place in that pantheon. It is a great
I'm
weapon.
not sure it does. It's very fun.
It's so good. It is so good.
But yes, the Blades of Chaos, yeah, okay. The Leviathan axe, maybe it should. It's a really fun weapon, but
it's Captain America's shield and axe form.
It is. Like
It's
everything about playing with this weapon is amazing.
And the fact that like you're using it in puzzles and it's always entertaining the first time you are using it to freeze an object and you forget you're using it to freeze an object and you recall it. I may or may not have crushed myself. But yeah, like it's a great game. I am now heavily looking forward to Ragnarok when it comes out. Because like the story goes some places, and it also has maybe the most interesting end of a game. Because one of the things that happens in a game, like a big open world adventure, is you beat the game and then the game has to do something to allow you to go back through and play other content.
Mm-hmm.
And there are good ways and there are less good ways, but the way that God of War leaves things is also something I have never seen before. Like, there's some stuff that happens that if you log out immediately after the credit roll, you're never going to see it. Like, there's some stuff that happens that is like a key part of the ending of that game that isn't going to trigger automatically, and it doesn't tell you to go do this thing. Like it hints that you should go do this thing, but it doesn't like give you a quest marker that says go do this thing. And like I've never seen a soft end to a game like that that's an open world game where, oh no, there's still stuff for you to find out in the world that's related to the experience that you just had.
I mean, I feel like when you say this, Undertale kind of does that and asks if maybe instead of going forward, you want to go say goodbye to all of your friends.
Yeah, that's different though. Like that's still being prompted by the game. I can't say any more without massive spoilers, but like there's a thing, like I didn't do it. Like I logged out of the game and one of my friends is like, oh, hey, by the way, you should maybe do this thing. I'm like, okay. And I did the thing. And like, oh no, this is the actual end of the game.
Double secret ending.
Yeah.
Cricket is very excited and approves.
Well,
we're not talking Kingdom Hearts here, are we?
Well, what's interesting about it though is like it makes logical sense that you should do this thing because the entire story arc of God of War, you were let into in the first 10 minutes of the game that your wife and mother of your child passed away, and her dying wish was that she wanted you to bring her ashes to the highest peak in the realms. And like the entire story is the things that happen while you're trying to bring her ashes to the highest peak in the realms. So yeah, I mean, it's this like God of War has this very, like, the story arc feels like the Odyssey. Like, it feels like reading an epic poem, like, because they all had this meandering aspect to them.
That's very intentional. It's based off of the Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, it fits because, like, that's the way these epic poems all resolve themselves as a series of unfortunate events that happened on the way to do the one thing.
Yup.
Anyway, it's very good, very playable on PC. It also still playable on PS4 or PS5, but it does control really well with mouse and keyboard.
My 2 random plugs. This is purely informative, as I am not going to recommend anybody try this, but you may be interested. Star Citizen is having a free fly in about 2 weeks. And if you haven't played it, if you thought it might be interesting but haven't played it since launch, No Man's Sky is a radically different game and really quite neat and chill and fun. This has been your update from space.
So one of the things that I did that probably still has all of the people in this channel scratching their heads is I randomly gifted everybody a copy of Boris the Bear, which is a 99-cent Steam game. Have any of you actually played it?
No.
Not yet.
I think the person who has played it is not on the podcast today.
It's not good. It's not good.
Okay, then I'm not going to play it.
Like, I mean, it's entertaining enough to install.
Is it better
briefly.
than Bad Rats?
It is better than Bad Rats, but not by much.
Ooh.
It's just, I don't know why it popped into my head to do this thing, but it did. Like, sure, yeah, I'm just giving a copy to everybody.
I'm going to just let you know next time Crimson Clover is $2 so you can give a good game out to people.
Yeah, like the guy that did this game apparently has exclusively released 99-cent games, and they all kind of look like class projects.
Mm.
Like they're better than a lot of the stuff that, you know, Jimquisition reviewed, but still.
We're talking low bars here.
This is low bar.
Releases roughly 1 game a month is from what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I was going to say, I think I'm now like a tempted troll one out of 3 because I've gotten Bad Rats, this game, and the letter V 6 times.
You also got 1001 Spikes at some point.
Oh, I did. Yes, I did. That was another very good game. I haven't beat it though.
Yeah, I mean, like any game that you gain life by drinking vodka and you're a bear with an AK-47, it's a special kind of game. Anyway, any final thoughts?
I don't know. It's Lunar Festival time in Guild Wars 2, so
You give envelopes to everybody?
it's a good time to get tiger themed stuff and make a nice nest egg by collecting lucky envelopes.
Final Fantasy XIV is running their Halloween event, which they didn't get to run around Halloween time last year for reasons.
Evil clowns.
Yeah, and unfortunately you have to run the event twice to collect everything.
You have to run the dungeon twice, but if you just don't get the hat, there's good reason maybe to not get the hat. You can get most of the stuff with only one run.
It's a weird dungeon, too.
It is. It is much more dungeon-y than the previous Halloween dungeon, which was entirely a puzzle in dungeon form.
I loved that one. Won't lie.
It was cool. I actually kind of like this one, too. It's just got different mechanics.
I need to do it at some time. It's just hard to develop to gather enough energy to queue up for, thing I haven't done before with random people.
Book me sometime.
Okay, well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.